I haven't lost track of my identity. Marlon Vore, 3rd grade archivist, Section 12, Western Wing of the Grand Library of Change. Every dawn, before I even lift my lids, I recite these details, gripping them like protective charms against the mutable existence beyond my thoughts. This habit serves as the lone fixed point in a realm where stability has vanished. Carathis earned fame throughout the sector for its academics and majestic academies. The towers of Hive Mentor stretched skyward, sheltering countless imperial intellectuals who documented the cosmos with exacting care. The administratum prized our planet for our archiving skills and discerning intellects. We reveled in our reliability, our bureaucratic flawlessness. Such naivety we displayed. I roused to the by-now routine feeling of my skeleton reshaping under my flesh. The discomfort has faded somewhat with time, or maybe my tolerance for it has worn down. My chambers stay minimal, a minor favor from my rank. On Carathus, the less you possess, the slimmer the chances of spotting alterations in your belongings by morning. My lone rack of private volumes rearranges itself each day, their covers showing labels I didn't buy, yet oddly recall perusing. I don my archivist garments unhurriedly. The material brushes my body variably with each sunrise, at times coarse as grit, at others smooth as grease. This morning, they seem nearly ordinary, although the hue appears brighter than before. A richer tone of azure that gleams with concealed designs as I shift. The imperial aquila stitched on the chest flap sprouted a 3rd head over the past week. Nobody has commented. The hallways in the archivist living quarters wind into fresh layouts. I've come to rely not on recollections of the route, but on the faint tug deep in my chest that directs me to my duties. Certain coworkers haven't adjusted as swiftly. They vanish after veering into corridors that close off after them. We avoid discussing the cries. "Morning benediction," Archivist Lavisha greets as I go by. Her features have held steady through recent cycles, even if her eyes have increased. This day, I tally 7, positioned in an arc over her brow. 3 weeks back, she possessed just the usual pair. "Knowledge is transformation," I reply with the ritual response. The phrase carries a metallic tang on my palate. "The latest delivery came in during the dark phase," she adds, matching my pace. "Core catalogs are starting to weave in the content." I incline my head, wary of saying more. Deliveries from the ground bring fresh tomes, novel data streams to integrate into the archive's holdings, additional pathways for alteration. The Grand Library of Change looms at the heart of former Hive Mentor. Its initial form was a wonder of imperial Gothic design, all soaring arches and colored panes illustrating lore saints and empire icons wielding pens and parchments. These days, the edifice inhales and exhales. The masonry throbs with luminous threads that experts have taught themselves to avert their gaze from. The tinted windows yet portray holy figures, but their visages twist into impossible grimaces, and their auras have morphed into coiling limbs of radiance. We traverse the checkpoint, where servitors probe our psyches for poor flexibility. Their mechanical parts have merged with more organic bits that quiver and spasm. One pins me with a stare from an orb lodged in its vocal emitter. Quote Mirror 4. It hums. Quote 5. Quote T6. I counter, minding to empty my reflections. The servitor's orb constricts, then expands beyond reason before clamping closed. Advance, it grants at length. Section 12 catalog needs your focus. Irregularities noted. Irregularities. The term ought to hold no weight amid endless upheaval of existence. Still, the library upholds its private coherence. Irregularities signal perilous straying from the intended evolution. They demand my involvement. I separate from Lavisha at the vast central chamber. Formerly a grand vault of stone and gilt, it now evokes the cavity of an enormous creature. The roof undulates with organic rhythm, and the ground yields softly underfoot. Pillars that formerly bore the weight now channel lore, with data visibly coursing via sheer vessels within the rock. Now and then, these vessels swell as info bursts travel along, paired with murmurs that resound in the psyche over the senses. Archivists navigate the area with intent, each immersed in solitary dialogue with the archive's perpetual mutations. A few display overt tokens of grace, their shapes refined to enhance their roles. Magister Helic hovers 10 cm off the surface, his limbs swapped for a gently writhing cluster of tendrils that hover without contact. Scribe Tula's digits have stretched to double their usual size, enabling her to index several volumes at once. Her vision has been swapped for faceted gems that bend illumination into dizzying motifs. I direct my stare straight ahead, zeroing in on the doorway to the west corridor. Section 12 lies in wait, lined with endless arrays of ever-mutating documents. The towering repositories rise before me, and I brace myself for yet another shift of observing information reshape right in front of me. The initial hint that this day will stand apart arrives as I approach my post. The customary workstation, where I've toiled for possibly countless cycles, looks untouched, yet the indexing gem pulses with an odd hue, a violet so intense it verges on ebony. I lay my palm on it gingerly, and data surges into my awareness. Section 12, Sub-Level Gamma, Rack 9. Irregular alteration spotted, Chronicles straying from sanctioned evolution norms. I scowl. Chronicles usually rank as the steadiest entries in the archive, evolving mainly through perspectives instead of core elements. For them to stray points to a profound decay, maybe outright defiance against flux. That kind of defiance threatens not only the entries, but also handlers like myself. I weave through the repositories, threading the maze-like racks that sometimes reorder when unobserved. The aroma of aged vellum blends with fresher, indefinable odors, such as static electricity and a cloyingly perfumed note that scorches my nasal passages. The illumination fades as I venture further in, sustained solely by glowing molds sprouting amid the racks, bathing all in an unhealthy azure sheen. Sub-level gamma seems mostly steady this time, even if the rack labels blink and alter as I go by. I tally deliberately, murmuring the figures to fix them firmly. 7, 8, 9. I halt at the 9th rack and survey the bindings arrayed there. The majority look standard, encased in mortal or alien hides based on their themes. Yet one tome grabs my notice right away, a stark ebony volume lacking any evident label. Its spot feels off, as if it hovers in its niche without truly anchoring to our plane. Guidelines require alerting an overseer without delay, but an impulse holds me back. A spark of inquisitiveness, one I believed excised from my thoughts ages past, flickers faintly. Without pausing to second guess, I extend my hand and brush the tome's edge. A jolt races through me. My digits buzz with familiarity, despite no deliberate memory of encountering this piece prior. With unsteady grip, I draw it free, anticipating sirens or the object warping in my hold. Nothing like that happens. The exterior remains blank, except for one metallic sigil that morphs and twists whenever I attempt to pin it down. I part the covers, and the interior sheets seem empty initially. But as I gaze, script emerges, letters materializing straight from the substrate, like bubbling up from hidden depths. The pristine chronicle of Cathy's. I voice the lines, and they resound oddly amid the silent repositories. A record untouched by edits. The notion strikes me as utterly alien, hard to grasp. On Carathus, all evolves, all reshapes. The notion of stasis isn't just erased, it's outright antagonistic to our altered state. I ought to seal it shut, I ought to slot it back and alert authorities to its presence, I ought to depart. Rather, I dive into the reading. The script outlines a chorus. Vague echoes stir of a realm devoted to sages and philosophers upholding the realm's verity. It recounts the initial faint traces of taint that went ignored, the slow creep of Tenian sect influences amid the intellectual elite. It chronicles the disastrous ceremony that ripped the barrier between material realm and the beyond, permitting the Changer's core to infiltrate our plane. But the most unsettling part details opposition, individuals who battled the shift, who gripped unchanging verity while existence itself spurned the very idea. It lists individuals, some recognized, others lost to time. And amid a group of verity guardians, a name surfaces that I recognize intimately. Millennium. My grip quakes so fiercely the tome almost tumbles free. This defies belief. I've devoted myself to the archive steadfastly since the recollection fades from me. slipping away like liquid from enfolded palms. How many turns have I served as archivist? When did I first don these garments? When did the alteration commence? Nothing comes to mind. This abrupt void in my recollections alarms me beyond any bodily shift I've observed. Archivist Vi. A tone emerges from my rear. You've uncovered something intriguing. I snap the tome closed and whirl about, confronting Magister Hellick directly. His suspended shape throws eerie silhouettes in the mold's radiance and his demeanor. The inscription proves illegible across a visage that's shed its last traces of humanity. Magister, I mutter haltingly. I merely sought to probe the irregularity. This passage defies alteration. I intended to log it promptly. Helix's mouth twists into something resembling a grin. Indeed, how intriguing. And have you uncovered the reason this specific entry withstands our Lord's grace? His gaze pins me in place, revealing he grasps the truth already. I gulp, my mouth parched in an instant. It seems to chronicle events from the past, I reply with caution. Maybe its basis in reality lends it inherent resilience. Facts, Helix sneers, the term laced with contempt. What a narrow notion. Truth yields to reshaping. Archivist Vor. Existence warps under viewpoint. By this point, you must grasp that. He reaches out, and I'm startled to see his digits tally 8, each ending in a slender talon. The volume, if you please. I ought to surrender it. Every urge for survival urges obedience, a plea for pardon over my meddling, contrition for my overreach. Yet a buried impulse, one I figured vanished long ago, holds me back. I must finish my scrutiny. For the archive entry, my voice declares unexpectedly, Helix's face rearranges, features shifting to emit peril. You overstep, archivist. The volume at once. My hold on the tome clenches firmer. With deference, Magister, Guideline 973 mandates thorough logging of any aberrant writings prior to extraction from the archives. I'm clueless if such a rule truly stands, or if edicts matter in our fluid hierarchy. Still, citing procedures gives Helix a momentary hesitation. Fine, he concedes after a pause. Finish your logging. You hold until this phase concludes. Deliver your summary and the tome to my station before you rest. He pivots and glides off, his trailing appendages twisting in evident irritation. I linger until he's out of sight before exhaling fully. The tome weighs more in my grasp, burdened by hazardous promise. I require a secluded spot to inspect it thoroughly, a haven from watchful stares and the library's ceaseless oversight. My workstation lies too visible. Study halls fall under constant watch. Shared lounges teem with presence. Yet one nook lingers, a utility alcove nestled in Section 12's edge, overlooked by the library's senses. I unearthed it seasons back, fleeing a brutal surge of shifts that mangled fellow keepers irreparably. I navigate there via a winding path, halting often by racks to feign standard duties. The alcove squeezes tight, suited for one alone, yet harbors an outdated console emitting a steady dim glow. I ease in and seal the panel. In this overlooked nook, I unfold the tome anew. The words sharpen here, steadier. I pore over them methodically, hunting insights into my essence, into Kathy's, into our surrender to the intolerable. Cycles slip by as I ingest my realm's authentic chronicle. Kathy served as a hub of imperial scholarship, yet harbored a covert dissent. Erudites chasing banned lore delved into shadowed wells of data, coalescing into a sect devoted to Tzeentch. The taint crept at first, then accelerated as vital roles succumbed to devotees. The ceremony breaching Karathi to the warp occurred 5 years ago, enacted through the fused psi-force of 300 tainted psychers. The Imperium struck back rapidly yet feebly. The Ordo Malus sealed the world but couldn't muster a total cleanse. Thus, Kathy's endured its doom, inhabitants twisting gradually beneath the alterer's sway. Yet defiance stirred. A web of faithful who battled to safeguard unaltered lore, to cling to their mortal core amid mutation and lunacy. And I, Malinvor, stood among them. The closing leaves outline a frantic scheme to ferry pristine writings beyond the globe, safeguarding a sliver of verity from Tzeentch's grasp. The effort crumbled. The faithful fell to capture, chiefs slain in spectacle. Survivors yielded to the magisters for reshaping. I shut the tome, thoughts spinning. Should this narrative hold, then my self-image crumbles. My recollections, my devotion to the repository, my embrace of flux, all fabricated, grafted after seizure. The genuine Malinvor opposed this blight. But with recollections forged, who lingers in me? What endures of the resistor? No leisure to ponder. The alcove's barrier flies ajar, and I confront Archivist Lavisha looming above. Her 7 orbs lock on with hunter's fervor. The Magi sister seeks you out, her voice layering over itself in clashing echoes, demanding the tome you were meant to hand over. I press the book against my chest, thoughts whirling. Time slipped away from me. The records proved far more intricate than I'd expected. Lavisha's gaze sharpens in flawless sync. He remains deeply unsatisfied. Follow me at once, and maybe your penalty will prove lenient. I stand gradually, weighing my choices. They're woefully limited. This archive twists like a maze, and though I might thread its ever-shifting corridors, what refuge awaits? The whole world lies tainted. No safe haven exists anywhere. But yielding would spell not only my end, but the erasure of the reality I now grasp. The final untainted chronicle of Carithus's fate, and more crucially, my own. Naturally, I reply, advancing as if to obey. Yet when I'm level with her, I thrust her aside with every ounce of force. She reels, caught off guard by the abrupt hostility from a typically docile archivist. I bolt beyond her into the aisles, hugging the volume like the invaluable relic it truly is. Her furious cries chase after me as I run, a chorus of wailing tones that appears to surge from all directions simultaneously. That noise will draw eyes. I have mere moments before the whole archive pursues. I weave through the shelves on gut feeling, veering at random, looping around, scaling ladder rungs to upper tiers just to drop down in another spot. The structure morphs beneath me, occasionally offering doorways that weren't there moments ago, or at other times, sealing off viable paths with fresh barriers of stacked volumes. The archive itself wavers, unsure if it aids or obstructs me. At last, I arrive in an unknown wing. The illumination shifts here. A soft golden hue replaces the customary azure sporelight of my familiar corners. These shelves hold tomes wrapped in substances beyond recognition, their labels inscribed in glyphs that sting to behold. I halt, panting heavily, and strain to hear. The echoes of the chase fade into remote halls. Maybe I've bought a brief respite. A flicker draws my attention. Amid the racks, a shape stirs. Not a fellow archivist or magister, but an altogether alien presence. A silhouette, forged from geometries that defy reason. It hints at a humanoid outline, even as it rejects such basic definition. Archivist Vor, it intones. Though no orifice mars its gleaming contour, you've wandered deep into uncharted territory. I flatten myself to the racks, unfamiliar ridges jabbing into my spine. Who, or what, are you? The shape inclines what could pass for a head. I am the curator, the origin and the end, guardian of every scrap of wisdom, present and yet to unfold. A shiver courses through me. The curator is legend, a tale spun for novice archivists to bind their loyalty. The being that directs the reshaping of lore, Tzeentch's immediate emissary in this vast repository of flux. You're not real, I murmur. Reality bends like water on Carathis, the curator counters, its shape undulating in what feels like wry mirth. As you're coming to see, it motions toward the book I still shield jealously. You've uncovered a curiosity, a thing that ought to remain buried. It's the reality, I declare, startled by the resolve in my tone. Reality, the curator repeats. Yet another malleable notion. What you grip is just one snapshot of history, locked in stasis, defying enhancement and anomaly. It's the genuine sequence I maintain from prior to the shift, prior to Tzeentch's taint on all things. The curator's contours pulse, swelling and shrinking in a rhythm I instinctively read as chuckles. Taint suggests decay. Archivist, Karis's transformation marks progress, adjustment, elevation. It drifts nearer, and I flatten harder against the racks, yearning to merge with them. Your realm languished in inertia. Your sages etched identical details across eras, caged in the jail of unchanging insight. Today, data pulses with life. It expands, evolves, transcends its origins. Isn't that learning's core aim? True learning demands reality as bedrock, I counter. Lacking that, wisdom crumbles to nothing. You adhere to outdated bounds, the curator observes, a hint of regret threading its otherworldly timbre. Even now, after endless efforts to unshackle your thoughts, it extends an appendage that stretches beyond measure. Hand over the tome, Melinv. It drags at you like ballast, blocking your rise. Yield it, and I'll unveil marvels past your wildest grasp. I grip the book fiercer, twisting to guard it. Never. The curator halts, its essence stuttering in what seems like astonishment. Never. Despite everything, you retain the spark of rebellion. Intriguing. We may have been overly lenient in your reshaping. You faltered, I retort. A sudden insight hits me mid-sentence. Your indoctrination never quite stuck. That explains why they stuck me with archiving tasks, right? You kept tabs on me, hoping I'd snap out of it. You served as a test case, the archivist concedes, a notably defiant participant. Most psyches yield to the transformation after proper groundwork. Yours displayed extraordinary defiance. The overseers viewed it as a compelling examination of human stubbornness's boundaries. Its shape morphs once more, expanding into something bigger, more menacing. Yet, every trial reaches its close eventually. Your stint as a free agent is over, Archivist V. Soon you'll merge completely into the overarching formula. It surges at me with abrupt velocity, its outline elongating and warping. I leap aside, tumbling under a study desk and springing upright beyond it. The archivist pursues fluidly, abandoning any pretense of humanoid shape. I dash onward into the uncharted wing, gripping the volume tight against my torso. The racks nearby start shifting, converging to seal off my route. I swerve leftward, then rightward, hunting for gaps in the tightening labyrinth. In the distance, I notice a plain door embedded in the partition, bare and featureless. Out of alternatives, I charge toward it, seizing the latch and yanking it wide. I hurl myself inside without a glance back, banging it closed. Pitch blackness engulfs me, thick enough to touch. The atmosphere hangs frigid and motionless, free of the living scents that saturate the library elsewhere. I grope through my garments for the compact light device I tote for scrutinizing manuscripts in dim spots. Its gentle radiance uncovers a slim stairwell plunging below, hewn from unremarkable rock so uniform it borders on insult after decades amid evolving structures. Lacking alternatives, I start downward. The steps coil endlessly, seemingly for ages, but my chronometer, now marked with 15 hours rather than the usual 12, indicates merely 20 minutes elapsed. At last, I arrive at the base facing yet another blank portal. I pause at this fresh barrier. The tome in my grasp throbs faintly, as if urging me on. I draw a steadying inhale and push the door ajar. What greets me shatters my assumptions. Following the fleshy terrors overhead, I enter a realm of rigid authoritarian design, sharp corners and bare masonry. Illumination stems from basic luminous spheres offering constant, unflinching light. At the chamber's heart looms a ring of cogitator devices. Their displays show emerald script against ebony voids, free from the erratic motifs plaguing all tech on Karath. Most startling remain the inhabitants, males and females clad in plain garments, untouched by alteration. Their countenances bear the correct array of traits in typical humanoid layout. They glance up at my arrival, faces flickering with shock and wariness. One, an elder with a trimmed silver beard, advances. "How did you discover this spot?" he challenges, tone edged with distrust, his palm drifting to the sheathed last pistol on his belt. I raise the volume, speechless. The fellow's gaze expands in acknowledgement. "The unaltered chronicle," he exhales. "From where did you obtain it?" "Section 12, I finally utter. Subsection Gamma." It stood out as irregular. His demeanor eases from doubt to guarded optimism. "And you claimed it, even with your reprogramming?" I falter, unsure how to convey it. I recalled, or started to. "I'm Malin Vor." A wave of response sweeps the assembled group. The silver-bearded figure draws nearer, peering at my features closely. "Vor perished 2 years back. I witnessed his end. No, I deny with a headshake. They seized me, reshaped my mind. My recollections got tampered with, but incompletely, ineffectively. I extend the tome. This sparked my recall of my identity, my true self. He accepts it gingerly, flipping through select leaves. This belongs to our collection, among the final pristine annals we produced prior to the cleansing. He meets my eyes with fresh fervor. If you're genuinely Vor, demonstrate it. Share a detail only he could know. I delve into my shattered recollections, seeking whatever might sway him. The underground network, I state deliberately. We dubbed ourselves Guardians of the Steadfast Script. Our gathering site lay in the sublevels, a derelict healing outpost. The code phrase, steady radiance amid shifting shadows. The silver-bearded one's stance softens a touch, and your function within the group? One more recollection emerges. I acted as a messenger. I ferried pristine documents across rebel outposts. Plus, I infiltrated the Grand Archive to mark items for safeguarding or elimination. He inclines his head gradually. You've retained sufficient to pose a threat. Regardless, he signals to the rest, who've observed our dialogue with strain. These represent the survivors. Among the Guardians stands Dovin Wrath, 27 individuals who've endured the transformation thanks to tech, belief, and pure defiance. He faces me again. I'm Dovin Wrath. We collaborated once, but never as allies. If you're genuinely Malinvor, reclaimed from the foe's grasp, you've shown up at a crucial juncture. He points to the cogitator arrays. We've linked up with an Imperial ship, a Navy frigate lurking at the system's fringe. They're on quarantine duty, yet they've consented to pull out a handful of us if we hit the surface and ping them. A spark of hope ignites inside me, a feeling so alien I scarcely know it. Escape, I murmur. Could it work? Wrath's face darkens, feasible yet unlikely. Getting to the surface means threading through the deepest infested zones of the hive. And should we make the pickup spot, the Changer's devotees will detect our scheme and block us. So why attempt it? I question. Wrath lifts the volume I delivered. Because of this. For authenticity. We've safeguarded remnants of pristine lore, chronicles, and innovations from the pre-change era. Delivering these archives to the Imperium ensures some essence of true Karthus endures, regardless of our fate. His gaze appraises me sharply. The issue remains. Can we rely on you? Your psyche's been altered, your allegiances overwritten. What guarantees this isn't a cunning snare? No response from me would convince him. I hardly trust my own mind. My ideas feel dubious, my recollections shaky. You can't, I concede. I possess no evidence past what's been shared. All I can claim is my desire to reclaim my past self, to reclaim being Malinvor, not the empty facsimile the archive forged, Wrath murmurs with a few companions, their faces somber. I linger, braced for summary judgment or banishment. At last, he regards me once more. We'll grant you an opportunity to demonstrate your worth, he declares. One from our group needs to head back to the higher tiers for the concluding data cache from our final agent in the admin tower. The task is vital, though it borders on suicide. Step forward, and we'll view it as evidence of your dedication. Dread should grip me at the thought, but only steely resolve stirs. Count me in, I reply instantly. I can navigate the archive without drawing the scrutiny a fully unaltered person would. I understand the guard routes, the safeguard measures. Wrath inclines his head, expecting no less. Fine then. Recharge, consume. In 6 hours, the endeavor starts. He guides me to a modest niche with a bunk and a vessel of pure water. Genuine H2O, unlike the faintly sticky liquid now trickling from fixtures above. I cleanse my features, the familiarity so profound it wells tears. A youthful female offers a dish of plain sustenance slurry. Like all in this concealed haven, it's free of the alteration. No morphing tastes or odd consistencies. I devour it thankfully, aware of my ravenous state. Reclining on the bunk, I inspect my palms under the constant glow. The digits look ordinary, save for a faint azure hue to the nails I don't recall. I follow the vessels under my flesh, observing how they occasionally shift when my attention drifts. I'm modified, less severely than others, but modified all the same. The doubt that pursues me. Does sufficient of the true Malinfor persist to fulfill this duty, to aid these survivors in fleeing, to make amends for decades of unknowing aid to the powers that ruined my realm? I have to assume it does. The other option terrifies beyond endurance. Slumber arrives in bursts, plagued by visions of tomes where letters skitter like bugs over sheets, reforming into fresh interpretations, altered realities. I rouse unrefreshed yet steadfast. No matter what follows, I'll confront it as Malinfor, not the entity the archive sought to shape. Reth and his deputies outline the assignment. The contact in the admin tower goes by Araka, recorded as a scribe in the documentation wing. She's compiled details on Karathi's shielding networks, data crucial for the breakout strategy. Her final message confirmed the work's done, but she couldn't haul the storage units out amid heightened watchfulness. My role sounds straightforward in theory, daunting in practice. Penetrate the admin tower, find Kai, secure the data modules, and slip back to base undetected. The path leads through prime surveillance hotspots in the hive, regions where the mutation has advanced far past the archive's milder shifts. They equip me with a compact comms implant masked as an anomaly, a small, throbbing lump that sticks to the flesh behind my ear. It'll enable it provides a one-way link for communication, allowing me to update my status or signal trouble ahead without risking a reply that could reveal their position. Just before I set off, Reth adds one final detail. He pulls a slender silver brooch shaped like an unfurled tome from a locked container. This belonged to you. We found it following your apprehension. Inside, there's a neural suppressor that could shield your thoughts from additional alterations. It can't halt bodily shifts, but it may safeguard whatever fragments of your real identity endure. With shaky hands, I clasped the brooch to the hidden fold of my archivist garb, keeping it concealed from view. The instant it makes contact, a gentle clarity washes over me, like a nagging hum fading into silence. Recollections rise nearer, still in pieces, yet easier to reach than moments ago. My thanks come out choked with unexpected feeling. Reth offers a rigid nod. Come back to us, Vor, no matter which aspect of you returns. I climb the endless stairs once more, slipping out via the plain door into the library proper. The shift hits hard, akin to leaving a sealed habitat module for the sweltering depths of a rainforest. The atmosphere hangs heavy with possibility, the very fabric of existence warping and glistening nearby. I smooth my robes, square my shoulders, and slip into the mild, absent-minded look of a committed archivist absorbed in routine tasks. The pursuit against me might linger, but in a realm where selves blur and blend, detection hinges mostly on what onlookers anticipate. I'll blend as one more cloaked silhouette amid the shelves, ordinary and overlooked. Reaching the administrative tower demands first escaping the library, then traversing the central hive plaza, and ultimately climbing through the layers of red tape to the archives section. Every segment brings fresh hurdles, fresh chances for insight or downfall. I weave steadily among the library aisles, drawing on my grasp of guard routes to evade magisters and their servitor watchers. On 2 occasions, I duck into hiding as scouting teams go by, their forms twisting and undulating more wildly than typical, as if the librarian's nearness hastened their metamorphosis. At length, I arrive at a seldom-used side exit, a utility hatch linking to the service corridors that tie the library to nearby edifices. Those passages used to be plain, functional routes. These days, they evoke innards over buildings, surfaces gleaming with unknown secretions that now and then glow with living light. I guide myself by recall and gut feel, tuning out the murmurs seeping from tiny vents in the barriers. The murmurs vow secrets, strength, rebirths surpassing imagination. If I just pause, heed, yield. The neural suppressor steadies my resolve against them, dulling their pull to a faint annoyance instead of an irresistible pull. The service corridors spill out into the vast Hive Plaza, once the thriving trade core of Hive Mentor. The scene before me scarcely echoes the lively bazaar of old. The area has ballooned beyond reason, gaps between edifices shifting by hidden rhythms. The designs have turned alive, structures fusing in ways that mock engineering sense, and the inhabitants barely human anymore. Carathis' dwellers drift across the plaza in assorted stages of change. A few seem nearly ordinary on approach, their alterations mild or shrouded under garments and hoods. Others have surrendered fully, their physiques reshaped to honor Tzeentch's whimsical essence. Traders with extra limbs bargain with patrons whose visages reshuffle into fresh masks mid-conversation. Youngsters bearing ever-shifting rainbow-hued gazes engage in pastimes whose guidelines morph right as they're described. I stick to the edges, darting from gloom to gloom, my archivist attire granting a measure of cover in a culture that at least pretends to value learning. In exposed zones I must traverse, I take on the vague, preoccupied stride of a thinker lost in profound musings, a familiar enough pose to dodge attention. The administrative tower's foundation rises before me, a warped mockery of regal design. Former rigid edges and corners now bend and coil, the whole edifice coiling skyward like a gigantic auger. The emblem that formerly graced the portal has morphed into a dual-headed fowl with jaws that perpetually part and snap, now and then snaring tiny aerial pests that stray near. With every clamp, faint cries of the consumed echo softly. The entry safeguards have advanced too. In place of rigid enforcers verifying credentials, swollen servitors now drift with probing limbs that they probe equally into body and psyche. The enhancements of these beings have merged with their biological forms in manners that would send any surviving tech priests into frenzy, provided they haven't been corrupted to the point of overlooking the heresy. I line up among the acolytes and minor officials waiting for permission to pass inside. Tucked in the pocket of my robe is my invented pretext for the trip, a standard data check order complete with the required approval glyphs. The paper has shifted thrice since Reth passed it over. The approval marks slither across its surface, reshaping into fresh identities every hour. In any other spot, such flux would raise eyebrows, but here, where stability itself sparks suspicion, it blends right in. The servitor handling my check boasts 8 optics circled around the remnants of a once-human visage. A mechadendrite snakes out from its chest, its end morphing into a device like a medical probe that sweeps across my form from crown to toe. Declare intent, it drones. The words crackling from a vox grill lodged in its neck. Reference Archive 937 Delta, I respond smoothly. The empty administrative label slips from my lips without a hitch. Data audit for the Grand Library of Change, clearance for the Western Wing. The servitor digests the details, its lenses whirling first one way, then the reverse. I keep my face serene, even as my pulse races beneath. The brooch at my collar warms against my skin, its mind-shielding tech holding firm to shield my cognition from the probe's quiet intrusion. Advance, the servitor declares at last. Floor 12, entry approved. Any straying from your declared aim leads to instant termination. I dip my head in acknowledgement and step forward, masking the wave of ease washing over me. The initial hurdle cleared, yet countless others await. Inside the admin tower, standard terms fail to capture the layout. What started as distinct floors linked by elevators and steps has evolved into a seamless, drifting expanse where gravity bends to whim. Clerks stride along walls or overhead, their orientations to each other in perpetual flux. Workbenches and consoles drift freely, turning lazily to suit employees whose bodily demands evolve hourly. I keep my goal in sharp focus, letting the faint tug of purpose steer me amid the surreal design. Here, bearings are ideas more than fixed paths, wayfinding an instinct over calculation. Those who fixate too rigidly on their route frequently vanish, trapped in endless spirals of botched logic. Floor 12 is as much a mental realm as a tangible spot. I climb a twisting stair that sporadically becomes a slope, a rung set, or a throbbing organic conduit that launches me skyward via peristaltic force. The feeling turns my stomach, but I push down the queasiness, zeroing in on the objective. The archives section claims a portion of floor 12 that takes shape as an enormous round hall bordered by info vaults. Unlike the fleshy nightmares pervading Carathis, this area clings to a thread of mechanical order. The demand for data access enforces limits on the mutations. Cogitators whir with near-ordinary efficiency, despite screens that sporadically glitch with rogue icons searing echoes into careless eyes. Scribes weave among the vaults, their traits showing mild alterations that appear consistent across the group, hinting at branch-specific evolutions via directed shifts. Many have extra digits for swift input or eye upgrades to track several info flows at once. Their hides carry a blue sheen that throbs with soft inner glow, casting an eerie, frigid radiance over their stations. I survey the hall for aura, drawing on the picture Reth shared. Woman around 30 Terran years, key trait a moon-shaped mark on her left brow. Amid endless flux, such a steady sign could be the sole surefire identifier. I weave through the space deliberately, posing as an off-site scribe running a basic verification. The resident scribes barely glance my way, lost in their duties or the quiet alterations rippling through their frames, indifferent to one more cowled stranger among them. After 60 minutes of cautious hunting, doubt creeps in that Ara may have been found out, or worse, altered past all recall. At last, I catch sight of her, hunched at a console in a remote alcove, half hidden by a pile of storage modules. The curved mark still shows on her brow, though now it faintly shines with the identical azure glow shared by her peers. I drift nearer without haste, pretending to inspect the nearby vaults. Once within whispering range, out of earshot from others, I whisper the passphrase, "Wreath granted, wisdom streams like a river, yet facts endure like rock." She tenses up, her hands halting above the cogitator display. Avoiding my gaze, she murmurs back so softly it's almost inaudible. Quote 11. A wave of ease surges over me. She's unchanged, still committed to the rebellion. I slide over to the neighboring console, feigning a data pull while talking to her in hushed tones. Reth dispatched me for the shipment, I tell her. He figures the moment is here. Her gaze flickers at Reth's name, but she regains control swiftly. Quote 14, she answers. Quote. Fiai. Quote 16, I inquire. She gives the tiniest dip of her head. Quote 17. I choke back a surge of frustration. Lingering in the admin tower amps up the chance of getting spotted, but options are slim. Quote 18. Quote 19, she instructs. Quote 20. Quote 21. I signal agreement with a faint tilt of my chin and drift off, upholding the act of digging through files for half an hour more before heading to the lower archives. The drop is smoother than the climb, a basic elevator shaft that lets me out into a poorly lit hallway flanked by storage bays. Sector 4 matches her sketch, a forgotten zone crammed with data pads and printed records pending conversion. The atmosphere carries hints of dust and rot, an oddly ordinary aroma in a realm where even smells can turn hazardous and erratic. I tuck myself behind a pile of cabinets and hunker down to wait. On Carathis post-shift, time drags oddly, but my timepiece, its dial now showing 17 hours rather than 12, keeps ticking reliably enough for the minutes. 1 hour slips by, then a second. Worry starts to chew at me. Kane's overdue. I'm weighing a trip back to records to scout when footsteps echo closer. Soft, hurried, aiming for quiet, but foiled by the odd boot drag on the floor. I brace myself, braced for ally or foe. Kane steps into view, outlined by the faint corridor glow. She checks over her shoulder, then darts inside, zeroing in on my spot with flawless precision. Quote 22, she states flatly. From her garments, she draws a compact case, etched with protective runes and symbols, marks I know shield against warp taint. Quote 23. I claim the case, tucking it deep in my robe's lining. Gratitude. This could rescue everyone. Kane shakes her head darkly. It might spare a few. No one leaves Carathis untouched. She brushes her forehead where the crescent mark throbs brighter. I sense it advancing inside. The urge to shift intensifies every day. Suppressors do little now. I spot the dread in her stare. I've known it in my own endless, sleepless hours when the voices swell loudest in my head. Quote 27. I urge her. Quote 28. Quote 29. She echoes, as if probing it. Quote 30. She rises a bit, pulling resolve from the words. Quote 30 or quote 30. I blurt out on impulse. Quote 30. She wavers, desire evident on her face. Quote 34. Before I can press, a noise from the hall stalls us cold. Thudding boots, several pairs closing in with intent. Quote 35, Kane breathes, her complexion paling. Quote 36. She shoves me toward a back door shrouded by heaps of grimy folders. I push back, loath to abandon her to the threat. Quote 37, she snaps. Quote 38. The steps intensify, joined by the servo hum of mechanical appendages and a vague, moist shuffle. I choose, despising the choice as I pivot to the door. Quote 39. I invoke. Her mouth twists in a wry grin. Quote 40. She swings to confront the entrance. She pulls a compact sidearm from the folds of her garments. I duck out the back door, easing it shut with care. Moments pass before the sharp whine of a shot rings out, then yells erupt alongside a piercing cry that ends in sudden silence. The tight service corridor past the records room gives scant protection, but leads straight to the spire's underlayers. I hurry along, resisting the impulse to bolt. Sprinting draws eyes, imprints faces on bystanders. A deliberate stride implies everyday anonymity. The data module container hugs tight against my torso. Its heft serves as an ever-present echo of Kane's ultimate offering to safeguard it. The secrets it holds embody our sole chance at freedom. Still, doubt creeps in despite myself. How many additional souls will perish to rescue so scant a number? Does guarding pure information justify the blood it spills? Thoughts like these offer no solace to a psyche already fraying at the edges. I turn my attention to the pressing mission, threading through the maze-like halls of the executive tower toward the ground-level doorway that will take me to the main atrium. And beyond that, to the archive and our concealed refuge. The alert races through the structure faster than I'd guessed, not via standard alerts, no wailing sirens or strobing lights, but via a wave of intuition rippling mind to mind, a mental signal alerting to a trespasser, a pilferer, an outlier ripe for seizure or elimination. It grazes my awareness, probing for a foothold, for acknowledgement. My mind suppressor ignites with heat, searing my flesh as it veils my inner workings from inspection. Nevertheless, I detect the pursuers gathering, lured by the trace of defiance, of steadfast intent amid the swirling chaos. The last obstacle before the main atrium rises into view. A screening post now humming with urgency as sentries scrutinize each soul trying to leave. Their shapes have abandoned any illusion of human form. Feelers and multifaceted gazes better fitted for spotting the deviant. Straight-through access is out of the question. I survey the area for options and notice a refuse chute meant for purging tangible records unfit for keeping. The twist of fate isn't lost on me as I pry apart the entry hatch and plunge into the foul gloom ahead. The drop is rapid and stomach-churning, the tube coiling in patterns that mock the building's solid geometry. I plummet blindly, powerless to brake or steer, until I burst through a filmy seal into an enormous holding vault deep under the tower. The jolt knocks the air from me. I sprawl there dazed for a few beats, gauging my injuries. No fractures, but welts are bound to bloom. Far graver is the setting I've landed in. The refuse vault extends past my light's beam, an immense hollow brimming with forsaken lore. Papers, storage pads, recall units, all ruled outdated or defiant against mandated shifts, pile in rotting mounds over the bumpy ground. The atmosphere hangs heavy with rot and something profounder, a mental foulness evoking forsaken ideas and cast-off realities. Worst of all are the chamber's other dwellers. Lurching shapes wander amid the debris piles, once human, but now pared down to mere twitching meat. Their gazes are blank, their motions aimless. Maybe keepers who botched their roles, or folks who bucked the transformation too boldly. Not gone, yet trapped in a limbo past dying. Their psyches scoured bare of self and aim, reduced to raw drives to rummage the jettisoned wisdom they once valued. I get up gradually, wary of sharp gestures that could snag their notice. Despite their vacant air, I pick up a lingering sentience in them, a craving for an essence they've forgotten. Should they clock me as distinct, as holding the unity they've forfeited, they could lash out with startling fury. A dim luminescence spills from one cavern side, hinting at an outgoing passage. I edge toward it, picking my steps amid the stumbling husks and the hazardous terrain of the lumpy info dumps. As I go by, one silhouette pivots, hollow sockets locking onto me with abrupt curiosity, its jaws part, exposing not fangs but a maw crammed with squirming tendrils. Remember, it rasps, the syllable splintering as if the idea strains its broken cognition. Remember me. I halt, dread realization hitting like a blow. Shreds of keeper garments yet drape its wasted body. The badge on its chest, dulled nearly to oblivion, sports the identical emblem as my own. This creature, this empty husk, bears the features of Dovin wrath. No, I murmur, denial clashing against the proof staring back. Wrath is still out there, alive and well. I talked to him just hours earlier, but this creature that looks like Wrath, or whatever's left of him, lunges toward me with bony claws. "4!" it rasps, my name twisting unnaturally from its wrecked jaws. "Failed! Everything failed!" I stumble back, thoughts spinning wildly. Could this really be Wrath, somehow thrown into this abyss right before I made it back to the sanctuary? Or is it some illusion, a fabrication designed to break my spirit, to sow doubt about the rebellion and my role in it? In a world where the fabric of existence warps without warning, how can I rely on what I see with my own eyes? The neural dampener pressed against my chest heats up sharply, signaling that my mind is drifting into risky waters. I latch onto the certainties, the objective, the data core strapped safely to me, the urgent drive to get back to the sanctuary. No matter if this lurching abomination is actually Wrath or just borrowing his form, there's nothing I can do for it right now. Quote 43. I say to the entity, trying to offer a scrap of solace. Quote 44. The phrase appears to soothe it somehow. Its outstretched arms fall limp, its head cocks in a gesture that borders on resignation. It retreats, merging back into the aimless procession of its fellow damned. I press on toward the shimmering doorway, picking up speed as more shapes start to stir at my movement. The passage ahead turns out to be a sewer line, funneling sewage and unidentifiable slop from the spire down to the underhive. The roof hangs low, obliging me to stoop while sloshing through the rancid flow. The muck stings wherever it splashes bare flesh, yet I forge ahead, eyes fixed on the faint glow ahead that hints at freedom. At last, the pipe spills into an enormous, forsaken factory chamber, one of the myriad derelict zones riddling the depths of Hive-World Mentor. The atmosphere here feels slightly less foul, but it still carries that pervasive iron bite that's infested every corner of Karthus since the transformation. After a brief scan, I pinpoint my position. The Underhive bazaars are close by, a chaotic no-man's land that was unruly even prior to Tzeentch's arrival, now twisted into a hellish marketplace, bartering bodies, minds, and essences with effortless indifference. Past those, the service corridors that snake toward the library and ultimately the sanctuary. I rinse off as much as possible with seepage from a dripping conduit that's less tainted, then rearrange my garments to hide the grimiest spots. The data core's housing is intact, despite the outer shell bearing etchings from its bath in the effluent. The protective runes remain solid, shielding the vital cargo from material and ethereal taint alike. Navigating the Underhive unfolds in a haze of alertness and strain. I skirt the primary routes, hugging the gloom and utility ways familiar only to laborers in the Forsaken. On 2 occasions, I spot squads of grotesque guards combing the area for prey or contraband. Hard to say if they're after me in particular or just enforcing the usual tyranny, but I slip past them either way. My recall of the Hive's pre-altered blueprint guides me effectively amid the alterations. When I finally arrive at the concealed access to the library's service paths, weariness fogs my head. The dampener keeps functioning, but the effort of holding on to sanity amid this insanity wears me down. Phantoms tease at the corners of my vision, luring me with simpler routes, with yielding to the shift, with embracing a supple new self, free from the stiff bonds of who I used to be. I shake off the fog, zeroing in on the task, on the comrades' names and visages awaiting my arrival, on my own identity as Men-Vor and the mission that anchors me. The service tunnels greet me with their fleshy terror, walls throbbing as if aware of my presence. They register my rebellion like a mild annoyance, yet possess no cunning to alert superiors. The plain door to the sanctuary looks untouched, a rare bit of stability in endless upheaval. I place my hand on it, murmuring the passphrase that announces my homecoming. Steady light amid shifting shadows. The panel glides aside, exposing the winding stairwell plunging into pitch black. I cast one last look over my shoulder, confirming no followers before crossing the threshold and locking it shut. The drop seems to stretch on forever this time, my limbs heavy with exhaustion, my brain muddled by the ordeal's echoes. The run-in with that imposter, donning Wrath's features, gnaws at me the hardest. Was it genuinely him, sentenced to that infernal limbo, or some mimic meant to erode my certainty? And if it was a ruse, how did it know who I was, spot me through my altered guise? In a reality where facts bend like clay, such riddles defy resolution. All I can rely on is what's inside me, the fundamental self that the neural suppressor aids in shielding against the relentless barrage of disordered forces. As I near it, the portal at the staircase's base swings open, exposing the barren, immutable haven that lies ahead. The disparity between this realm and the grotesque, living nightmare of the upper hive hits me so intensely that I reel, briefly lost in the abrupt change of sensations. People hurry over to steady me. Unaltered human palms, free from any distortions, lead me toward a chair. Familiar human tones pose inquiries that swirl indistinctly through my weary thoughts. I concentrate on the vital duty at hand. Delving into my garments, I retrieve the data module holder from Cain. Somehow I manage to utter that she remained in the fray. She sacrificed everything for this. The holder transfers from my grasp to theirs. I spot several familiar countenances nearby. Insurgents whose traits I committed to memory from the prior session, yet Wrath isn't present among them. "Where's Dovin Wrath?" I inquire, my words cutting sharply through the surrounding bustle. A hush descends, with gazes shifting my way, marked by bewilderment and worry. "Reth." One female advances, her forehead creased in thought. "Reth passed away almost a year back." "Vor, you're aware of this. You witnessed the event firsthand." My thoughts spin wildly, recollections clashing and intertwining. "No," I protest firmly. "He prepared me for the assignment merely hours earlier. He handed me this." I brush the neural suppressor affixed to my inner layer. "He dispatched me to locate Cain." The woman shares looks with her allies, their demeanors somber. "It seems the manipulation is unraveling," she murmurs softly. "The authentic recollections are emerging, though they're splintering, blending with the fabricated ones." "What do you mean?" I press, standing abruptly from my position, only to teeter as dizziness engulfs me. She signals the group to back away, then settles next to me, her approach compassionate yet resolute. "I'm Sarenve. I command the surviving guardians of the unaltered chronicle. Devanth served as my forerunner. He perished while protecting our former refuge after the overseers uncovered it. You were present. You assisted in relocating our group as he blocked the access point. A throbbing ache builds in my skull while rival accounts of existence vie for control. I recall W.H. orienting me recently, complete with his silver stubble and grave look. Yet now, with a sudden chilling precision, I also envision myself in a tight passage, discharging a plasma sidearm at encroaching abominations while yelling for everyone to flee. I hear his last agonized cry. "These two visions can't both hold truth," I murmur. "Just one does," Vi replies softly. "Upon your arrival here 2 days prior, your psyche had been so deeply reshaped that you failed to know us, or even yourself. The neural suppressor has labored to reclaim your genuine past. However, the recovery isn't flawless. Your consciousness invented Wrath as a link tying your actual history to the imposed fiction from the archivist. 2 days, I repeat, skepticism battling the proof in my shattered recollections. I've only now reached this place. I delivered the volume, the pristine account. I offered myself for the operation. Vi inclines her head with regret. You came back to us 2 days ago, teetering on insanity yet resisting the influence. You retained sufficient awareness to track us down, to alert us that the archivist had detected your defiance against the alteration and was pursuing you. We provided the neural suppressor which somewhat anchored your sense of self. The day before, you stepped up to secure the data modules from Arcane. I conducted your orientation personally. She draws a compact hollow emitter from her attire. The projection that activates depicts her positioned opposite me at the very desk I associated with Reth's instructions. The dialogue echoes the original closely, though not precisely. The core elements of the preparation match, but delivered through her voice instead of the one etched in my mind. "This defies belief," I mumble. Yet even as the phrase escapes, I sense its inaccuracy. The neural suppressor presses hotly against my torso, straining to disentangle fact from fabrication. "I needed WH," Vi states plainly. Your mind wasn't prepared to confront his absence. Thus, it summoned him into your now. The suppressor couldn't block this specific illusion since it arose from your inner turmoil, not external force. I remained seated in shocked quiet, striving to align these disclosures with my recent ordeals. If wrath stemmed from my broken psyche, what other illusions might I have conjured? Was the entire endeavor authentic? Did I actually obtain the data modules from Cain? Or is that yet another fabrication? As if sensing my inner turmoil, Vi sets the holder on the surface dividing us. The endeavor was legitimate. You prevailed, Vor. The data modules are authentic, holding precisely what we anticipated, the details essential for linking with the Imperial Retrieval Squad. Your achievements stand firm, Vor, regardless of the warped lens through which you viewed them. A surge of ease flows over me, swiftly chased by doubt. If I can't rely on my recollections or senses, then who or what am I? What part of Vor endures unspoiled, shattered by the transformation or broken by injury? I whisper my name once more, clinging to the phrase that's carried me through endless dawns of doubt. Menvor, 3rd grade archivist, Section 12, Western Wing of the Grand Library of Change. Those terms feel sour on my tongue these days. The persona they outline stands exposed as a fabrication erected over the wreckage of my authentic essence. Your name is Mullenvor, Vi affirms. But you weren't ever an archivist. Instead, you served as a xenolinguist assigned to the administratum team on Carathis, focusing on decoding and analyzing extraterrestrial signaling frameworks. Once the shift struck, your skills proved essential to the Magisters. Instead of executing you immediately, they reshaped your thoughts, convincing you that your loyalty to the library had always been absolute. A xenolinguist. That title echoes with a surprising closeness, akin to a label unspoken for ages, yet immediately identifiable. Snippets of recollection emerge. Disjointed visions and feelings unrelated to shelves of volumes or digital pads, but tied to extraterrestrial relics and intricate glyph arrays etched into weathered rock. The resistance, I murmur, seizing these fresh recollections, attempting to weave them into a unified tale. You helped establish it, Vi replies, a hint of admiration coloring her tone. As the earliest indicators of cult presence surfaced on Carathis, you deciphered the markings, grasped their meaning ahead of everyone. You alerted the planetary overseer, formed the first opposition groups, and set up safeguards for safeguarding unaltered wisdom. A spark of self-regard flares inside me, soon subdued by the awareness of my total dismantling, my sense of self supplanted, my goals twisted to aid the exact powers I'd opposed. And today, I inquire, drained to my limits, what's the next step? Vi gets to her feet, motioning for me to trail her. We're gearing up for evacuation now. The Imperial ship will try its approach in 36 hours. We've got tasks ahead if we're to endure until we hit the surface. I stand shakily, trailing her further into the refuge, where fellow resistors cluster near a projected image displaying a network of passages from our hideout to a ground-level outlet a few kilometers off. The following day slips by in a haze of readiness and strategy. The info modules from Cain hold more than just details on world defenses. They include precise charts of the minimal tainted routes to the surface routes, where existence clings to a degree of constancy and natural principles function somewhat reliably. My part in the breakout scheme sharpens as the efforts progress. Despite stemming from my stint as a tainted archivist, My grasp of the library's layout turns out crucial for charting our course via areas where the building's framework links to ancient pre-shift conduits. While the setup continues, my thoughts persist in their gradual, agonizing rebuild. The neural suppressor hums relentlessly, scorching my skin as it aids in distinguishing real recollections from fabrications. Vi notes that the method isn't flawless. Certain aspects of my prior self might vanish irretrievably, supplanted past retrieval. But the remnants are authentic, the heart of my former and enduring identity under the veils of taint and indoctrination. The 23 resistors ready themselves with stark determination. Armaments get inspected repeatedly, even though everyone knows conventional weapons provide scant defense versus the terrors ahead. Far more vital are the protective runes and suppression devices that guard our psyches from outright control, alongside the fierce resolve to uphold our essences amid reality's own erosion. Amid the gear being assembled for the trek, I spot a container holding scores of tiny memory shards, each sealed meticulously from decay. When I ask about their purpose, Vi's face grows grave. "It's the trove of lore we've safeguarded," she elaborates. "Chronicles of the past, empirical findings, first-hand tales of existence prior to the shift, all that captured Carathis' former identity, stored in a resilient format immune to Tiana's sway. This is our real battle, Vor. Not merely survival, but safeguarding the facts themselves." In that moment, I grasp our quest's deeper aim. We're beyond fleeing a cursed planet. We're salvaging its spirit, the steadfast essence the chaos entities have labored to obliterate and revise. This duty's vastness presses down on me like a tangible burden. In the waning moments prior to our launch, I gravitate toward a modest contemplation nook on the sanctuary's edge. Isolated from the frenzy of setup, I can center on the ongoing effort to reassemble my sense of self. Shutting my eyes, I dwell on the recollections that strike truest, those that vibrate with an authenticity it pierces through the shifting essence of Carathis. I recall positioning myself in front of a strange monolith on a barren expanse, my hand gliding over inscriptions that baffled ordinary experts for ages. I recall the rush of insight as designs surfaced from seeming disorder, as dialogue spanned the divide among beings divided by physiology, ideology, and epochs. I recall the initial whispers of sect involvement in the depths of the underhives, my mounting unease as I spotted aspects of emblematic script that humans ought not to grasp, designs hinting at encounters with beings past the shroud of existence. I recall alerting the overseer, facing rejection, rallying fellow thinkers and authorities who echoed my worries, the birth of the guardians of the steadfast lore, our frantic attempts to record and safeguard wisdom amid the encroaching decay. And I recall the occasion of the grand ceremony, the heavens splitting overhead hive mentor, the inconceivable hues flooding via the fissure in existence, the onset of the shift. These recollections seem firm, rooted in a world that predated Tian's arrival. I hold on to them, employing them to outline my core, to separate my authentic self from what the archive sought to mold me into. The moment has arrived. Vei's voice breaks my reverie. She lingers at the alcove's threshold, outfitted for the trek in plain jumpsuits that could blend with laborer's garb in the higher hive strata. A spare sidearm rests secured on her belt, and the mind suppressor around her neck emits a constant azure glow. I stand, surprisingly grounded amid my splintered recollections. I am prepared. The breakout group assembles at the concealed access to the passageway network guiding us upward. 23 individuals, the final unaltered people on Cathy's, shouldering the weight of a planet's authentic chronicle. Vi speaks to us concisely, her message straightforward yet compelling. We bear the remnants of Carathis inside ourselves, she declares, indicating both the tangible info repositories and our psyches. No matter what unfolds in the coming stretch, keep in mind that while we uphold the facts, our realm endures. With that, we commence our climb, departing the utter constancy of the refuge toward the ever-morphing domain of Carathis. The starting corridors stay mostly intact, vintage service routes from the hive's founding era, too ordinary to draw the gaze of the architects behind our realm's overhaul. Yet, As we ascend further, traces of taint grow clearer. The surfaces sporadically undulate with unnatural fluidity, the steel and stone melting like tallow prior to hardening into altered shapes. The atmosphere grows dense with mental energy, bearing murmurs that graze the fringes of awareness, offering might, insight, metamorphosis surpassing human grasp. The mind suppressors shine brighter at every tier we scale, laboring more to uphold our mental wholeness against the mounting force of disordered sway. A pair from our group display fatigue indicators, their actions growing unsteady, their words fragmented. Vi observes them intently, her grip staying close to her firearm. We encountered the initial significant barrier 6 hours along our path. A surveillance post where the aged service routes merge with fresher corridors to the central hive production zones. Per our intel, the post ought to have sparse personnel, the Magister's troops prioritizing key zones. Reality unfolds otherwise. As we near the post via a utility conduit alongside the primary route, I tally no fewer than 6 sentries, their shapes so profoundly altered that tracing their prior human forms proves futile. More alarming are the hovering drone craniums roaming the zone, their enhancements merged with chaos-infused tissue, optic arrays sweeping relentlessly for illicit motion or cognition. Vey calls for a pause, summoning the squad heads for a quick discussion. The intended path is blocked, yet the options mean either a major deviation via zones of severe existential warping or a head-on clash with foes that surpass us in count and perhaps firepower. I examine the post's arrangement, something tugging at my recollection's periphery. Then it snaps into place. A fragment from my archive days, eavesdropped exchanges among magisters on guard measures. The drone craniums, I murmur. They function via a detection scheme rooted in mental frameworks, not optical cues. They are set to overlook those exhibiting specific altered schemas while flagging unaltered human cogitation. How does that aid us? One squad head inquires. Our suppressors deliberately block us from acquiring those schemas. They protect us from alteration. I amend, but they don't inevitably block us from briefly occasionally emulating the cognitive rhythms that the skulls are designed to overlook. I glance at Vey. We could tweak the neural dampeners to broadcast a fabricated mental imprint, effectively masking our consciousness to seem tainted while keeping our authentic identities hidden underneath the veil. She furrows her brow, weighing the dangers. That kind of tweak would render us somewhat susceptible to genuine corruption. Should the mask falter or the vulnerability persist too long, we'd start transforming. I concede the point, yet stress that the impact would prove short-lived, undoable after we reset the dampeners to peak performance. It's a deliberate gamble, yet it boosts our odds far beyond battling outright or detouring the lengthy path. Following more debate, Vi greenlights the strategy. As the expert in both archive protocols and alien linguistics, I collaborate with the squad's engineers to alter the dampeners, fine-tuning their emission traits to emit the precise neural signals that the defenses will deem permissible. With the upgrades finished, we advance toward the barrier in scattered teams, striding with the deliberate gait of colony drones fulfilling their duties. I guide the initial squad, my pulse racing as we enter the sightline of the servitor skulls. The hovering abominations pivot in our direction, their optic apertures widening while they probe our simulated neural profiles. In a harrowing instant, I dread that our ruse has crumbled. But then the skulls swivel aside, reverting to their surveillance circuits absent any alert. The sentries pose a separate hurdle. Distinct from the rote servitors, they hold sufficient sentience to probe unknown visages, irrespective of our broadcast signals. We synchronize our entry with a rotation of shifts, weaving past amid the fleeting disarray as one set of watchers supplants the next. Beyond the barrier, we slip into a deserted refinement vault to recalibrate our dampeners for safeguarding. The fleeting brush with disordered forces has imprinted itself. A few squadmates mention migraines and vertigo. One female gazes in dread at her palms, where faint webbing has formed between her digits. The engineer reassures her the alteration will subside upon the dampener, enforcing complete shielding. Still, the episode acts as a stark caution of our fragility. We press onward and skyward, adhering to the charted path where feasible, adapting on the fly as needed. When we hit zones where the fabric of existence has warped beyond our held schematics, the trek turns ever more bizarre. Passages contorting into unfeasible shapes, rooms that loom vaster within than their outer bounds permit, pull of gravity flipping abruptly, compelling us to tread on partitions or overheads prior to reverting to standard footing. Amid every twist, I hold fast to my pieced-together self, chanting my genuine title and mission as an incantation. Menv, xenolinguist, resistance originator, guardian of verity. The firmer my grasp on this self, the more instinctive it grows. The archivist's implanted recollections dissolving like a reverie at dawn. 16 hours along our climb, we arrive at a site our charts label a fairly steady transfer node, a junction linking service conduits to sanctioned conveyance lines ascending to the hive's heights. Per our gathered intel, tapping these lines gives our strongest shot at traversing the leftover span to the pickup swiftly, albeit heightening our visibility to oversight. We halt for a quick breather, ingesting sustenance packs and inspecting gear. The toll of the expedition etches across each visage, guises hollowed by weariness. Traits taught from the nonstop strain of upholding psychic stability amid surroundings bent on eroding it. Vi sketches the concluding segment of our scheme. We'll split into triads, each pursuing a distinct trail to the surface rendezvous. Such separation heightens the likelihood that a portion will attain the Imperial craft, guaranteeing the intel we bear departs Carthais, regardless of whether every one of us makes it. I'm slotted into Vay's triad with 7 more, encompassing the engineer and the lady who'd webbed fingers at the barrier. Her state has mended somewhat, yet not entirely undone, an alarming indicator of the dampener's constraints. While gearing up to diverge, my thoughts drift to Ara Kane, who gave her life to deliver the data core to us and to Dovin Wrath, both the authentic figure who perished shielding the prior haven and the specter my psyche conjured to cope with that bereavement. Their offerings, one tangible and one emblematic, embody the toll of upholding truth on a planet sworn to its erasure. No matter the outcome, Vi addresses the gathered, hold in mind the reason we resist, not merely for our endurance, but for the truth that endured and persists under the deceptions. Carathis might be forfeit to the Imperium, but its truth will endure as long as a single one of us endures to testify. With that declaration, we split into our designated squads and set off. Every team heads to a separate entry into the primary transit network. My squad trails Vay into a maintenance conduit that leads to an overlooked freight dock. The enormous transit conduits ahead were originally built for shifting goods across hive strata. These days, they ferry travelers whose forms resist simple labels. Inhabitants of Cathys whose alterations have advanced well past the minor shifts I noticed back in the library. We linger until a break in the pedestrian flow, then step out onto the dock, mimicking the preoccupied, somewhat bewildered demeanor of typical mid-hive laborers. Our jumpsuits, intentionally dirtied and frayed to imply humble standing, allow us to merge with the everyday crowd. The neural suppressors emit a faint veil of disguise, sufficient to dodge instant suspicion from passers-by without skimping on robust defense from genuine taint. A transit pod pulls in, a twisted mockery of imperial engineering. The former plain freight box has evolved into an entity akin to a breathing creature. Its surfaces throb with evident vascular networks, its hatches parting and sealing like enormous eyes. The arrivals who step off glide with eerie human fluidity, their appendages twisting at unnatural joints, their visages morphing endlessly through assorted facial layouts. We climb aboard swiftly, scattering ourselves across the pod to evade the look of a cohesive unit. Inside, the air reeks of ionized air mixed with a cloying, scratching scent that stings my nasal passages. The benches give way like tissue under my form, molding to me in a way that's unnervingly personal. The ascent unfolds in strained quiet. We all concentrate on upholding our psychic barriers against the mental strain that builds with each tier we climb. The fellow riders barely notice us, immersed in their personal metamorphoses or chatting via a blend of spoken words and telepathic bursts that manifest as flickering hues in the space around them. 2 stops shy of our target, the pod halts without warning. The panels spiral apart to welcome a cluster of silhouettes that send a shiver down my spine. Magisters, their garments echoing those I donned as an archivist, yet decorated with glyphs that sting to behold straight on. Their countenances have warped past any trace of human form. Traits arrayed in designs hinting at glimpses into dimensions mortals weren't built to grasp. They prowl the pod at a leisurely pace, evidently hunting for a person or item. One lingers by me, its cranium cocking at a degree that would shatter an ordinary person's neck. I fix my stare downward, my mind deliberately empty save for the feigned aura of slight decay. A local gradually succumbing to the shift, yet not significant enough for focused scrutiny. The resistance is getting frantic, the Magister remarks to its peer, its tone layering over itself in clashing harmonies. They imagine fleeing the gift of evolution, clinging to their narrow views outside our Lord's grasp. The second Magister emits a noise resembling mirth, although the sentiment it conveys bears no human parallel. Let them attempt it. The ground units have been warned. The rescue craft they're banking on will encounter only decay upon arrival. Ice floods my veins at this revelation, yet I refrain from any outward sign. The Magisters finish their inspection of the pod, finally exiting without trouble. The panels close again, and we press on. At the first chance, I edge toward where Vi positions herself at the pod's back. Feigning a need to brace against the pod's sway, I bend in close to murmur. The pickup site's been exposed, ground units on standby. Her face stays impassive, though I catch the swift assessment in her gaze. She gestures discreetly to the rest of the squad, signaling readiness to adapt our strategy. Upon arriving at our intended stop, just some of us exit. Vi and her companions proceed higher, a ploy to pull focus while my trim team hunts for a backup path. The station here deviates wildly from the blueprints we reviewed. The expected simple atrium has twisted into a coiled expanse where paths curl inward in geometries that defy physics. Locals traverse these routes without apparent distress from the illogical layouts, their frames frequently exhibiting comparable breaches of physical rules. We proceed cautiously via utility corridors and repair ducts to skirt the primary lanes. Per the engineer now guiding our shrunken unit, a nearby crisis air duct ought to grant straight passage to the exterior, sidestepping the tainted rendezvous spot. Locating the shaft turns out to be a real challenge amid the ever-changing layout. Yet we finally spot the entry panel concealed behind a throbbing cluster of crystal formations that give off gentle tinkling noises upon contact. Our technician bypasses the lockdown measures, causing the panel to glide aside and expose a steep chute rising higher than our beams can illuminate. The ascent proves exhausting, intensified by the worsening instability of the surroundings. The passage itself acts almost organic, sporadically tightening or widening, requiring us to adapt our climb on the fly. The atmosphere thins out, buzzing with static that lifts the hairs on our skin and sparks across our lips during conversation. Following what seems an eternity, we arrive at a lateral corridor that, per our faltering schematics, ought to connect to an exit near the surface about 1 kilometer away from the initial pickup site. This passageway bears traces of fresh use, foot impressions in the grit indicating that Empire operatives might have employed it to breach the colony. A spark of optimism ignites at this hint of Empire activity, though I recall the Overseer's warning. The rescue operation could well be tainted, with the Empire's troops subverted or eliminated. We advance more warily, arms at the ready, suppressors running full throttle. As the mental strain intensifies nearby, the corridor widens into a vision of horror. We step out onto the remnants of a freight handling area at the edge of Hive Mentor. The enormous docking platforms meant for transport vessels are still identifiable, but the nearby edifices have warped into surreal towers, straining against a heavens unbound by ordinary hues or spatial rules. Right in the heart of the main dock rests an Empire transport craft. Its stark contours and utilitarian harshness stand out starkly against the surrounding turmoil. Encountering this steadfast emblem of the Empire fills my eyes with moisture, a raw jolt of a world ruled by structure and predictable physics. Yet unease creeps in. The craft's access ramp hangs down, yet no sentries appear. nor any evidence of battle, no corpses or scorch patterns implying the overseer's squad has struck already. The quiet hangs heavy, like a hunter's breath held before the pounce. We duck behind a mangled pile of equipment that could have been a freight mover in another life, scanning the dock for traces of Empire soldiers or hostile elements. The technician fires up a distant comm device, trying to link with the craft's operators via the authentication signals from Horrifying's files. Feedback crackles back, laced with snippets that could be speech or just chaos. Suddenly, the line sharpens. State your identities. A sharp, unmodified human tone insists. Its everyday clarity almost shatters my resolve. The technician replies with the verification codes, declaring us as insurgents in need of evacuation. Silence follows, then the voice resumes, strained clear despite the interference. We've been cut off from the remaining pickup squads. Readings indicate huge warp surges heading straight for us. We can wait 10 minutes at most. If you're approaching, do it immediately. The technician glances my way, hesitation in his eyes. Without Vi here, command of our team falls to me, the highest-ranking survivor. The choice presses down hard, trust clashing with doubt. The vessel looks authentic, the speaker unaffected. But in a domain where lies thread through existence, is trust possible? I reflect on the data modules, the vital, untainted intel we bear. On the mind shields that guarded our sanity during the trek from the Hive's core, on Horrifying's devotion and those of us, plus the many who perished to safeguard Kathy's secrets amid its collapse. We move forward. I choose, seizing the moment before it's gone. We dash from hiding, charging over the exposed terrain to the idling craft. The gap warps and shrinks as we hurry. The platform feels both impossibly expansive to traverse and eerily near. Distances here above ground shift as wildly as they did in the archive's bowels. Midway to the vessel, the world rips apart in front of us. The atmosphere parts along a straight fissure, offering a peek into an abyss of raw chaos and insanity. Through this gash in tangible existence emerge the overseers, their shapes now free from any mortal bounds. They glide to block our path, hovering off the surface, dragging wisps of power that form outlines like appendages, limbs, ideas without earthly counterparts. Trailing them lurch entities that used to be people. Psi inhabitants of Kathy's, reduced to mere twitching puppets of flesh, controlled by their overlord's whims. We unleash a barrage of lost beams and heavy slugs hurtling at the oncoming abominations. Several hit true, ripping apart tainted meat or fizzling out on shields of twisted chance. The overlords counter with mental projections, not crude arms, but psychic constructs that hammer straight at our psyches. Our mind shields glow hot with frantic power, fighting to hold our sense of self against this brutal onslaught. Among us, the lady whose hands started fusing into webs lets out a piercing cry and drops to the ground. Her facial skin undulates like liquid, traits melting and reshaping in frantic bursts, as if auditioning new faces. The gear expert seizes her wrist, hauling her upright. "Press on," he yells. "The transport! Stay on the transport!" She staggers up, cry echoing, yet her feet propel her onward while her thoughts splinter beneath the mental barrage. We push our frantic advance, shooting on the move, carving a narrow path of security amid the surging foes. The transport's thrusters erupt in a thunderous blast that pierces the eerie clamor of combat. The flyer readies for instant liftoff. The entryway stays open, one silhouette spotted below it, unleashing a heavy rifle with robotic accuracy against any foe drawing near. Astartes warrior. The gear expert breathes out, awe and optimism blending in his words. The Inquisitions poured real muscle into this rescue if the Adeptus Astartes are here. The massive armored form lays down suppressive blasts as we dash the last stretch to the entry. 3 make it, clambering into the haven above. I glance rearward for the rest, catching the gear expert's collapse at that moment. A coiling swarm of force whips ensnares his frame, hoisting him skyward where he writhes without sound in torment. The lady with the webbed hands hits the entry right after me, her visage still flickering through bizarre shapes, her psyche obviously crumbling to the mutation. The Astartes pauses, weapon aimed at her advance. "She's one of ours," I call out. The shield's breaking down, but she's human yet. The warrior chooses, shifting to clear her way while blasting at the chasing overlords. I assist her aboard, bearing her as her limbs start shifting, joints popping loudly in reconfiguration. All who can board, do so now. A command snaps via the transport's outer speakers. Get set for urgent takeoff. The Astartes retreats up the entry, methodically targeting the closing nightmares. I tally us with dread pooling inside. From the starting 23 rebels, just 4 have gained the transport. Nothing on Vay's squad, no clue if they surfaced another route or perished to the Overlord's troops. The entry starts folding shut as the warrior enters completely. Via the shrinking slit, I spy one last view of Carathes, its warped towers and bizarre structures that once stood as a noble imperial hive city. Of the gear expert, beyond human now, his form a stage for wild mutation. Of the overlords, their focus shifting off us to fresh threats, confident their lord's realm endures our minor triumph. The door locks with a solid whoosh of air sealing. Within, the transport's cabin offers a sharp break from the hell we fled. All sharp edges and practical imperial build, free of chaos's stain. Servitors and mortal staff bustle efficiently, stowing gear and bracing for the harsh surge of hasty exit. An individual, in the grim black garb of an inquisitorial aide, nears us, eyeing each escapee with portable scanners that hum and beep, picking up the faint alterations to our forms and spirits. "The records," he states flatly. "Did you retrieve them?" I retrieve the container with the data shards, holding the safeguarded pure lore of Cathes from the corruption. "All we managed to rescue," I explain. "Archives of history, research findings, eyewitness tales, the real story of Cathes prior to the fall." He accepts the container with care, locking it into a fortified holder. "The Ordo Malleus appreciates your efforts," he adds, voice easing a touch. "You've salvaged a vital piece from the jaws of the arch foe." The lady with the webbed hands slumps into a chair. Her shift advances even in the transport's guarded hold. The mind shield at her neck flickers wildly, battling to halt the alterations underway. "She requires aid," I inform the aide. "We all require it. The shields only hold so long. We've endured far too much already, and the exposure has lasted too long." He gives a somber nod. "The medical procedures are all set. You'll enter isolation right away, pending the Inquisition's assessment of the contamination's reach, and if it can be undone." Isolation. The term echoes with dark undertones. Yet I can't muster any dread for what's to come. Following the horrors of Carath, the archive of mutations and the Magisters, plus the relentless attacks on existence itself, even the Inquisition's stern compassions feel like a relief. The transport quakes as it pierces the upper layers, surging swiftly toward the Imperial ship hovering in orbit. From a narrow window, I observe Carathis shrinking away, its landscape a chaotic blend of surreal hues and designs, stark even from this distance. A planet altered past any hope of salvation, though not erased from recollection or verity. Within the safeguarded vault, the info shards preserve the unaltered chronicle of a realm that survives only in those archives and the thoughts of the scant few who fled its collapse. I press against the mind suppressor resting on my chest, sensing its constant heat on my flesh. My recollections are still splintered, certain ones erased permanently by the archivist's indoctrination, while others are warped by shock and the burden of upholding one's sense of self amid a domain built for its erasure. Yet the heart endures, the vital essence of my being. Malinvor, xenolinguist, rebel warrior, outlasted. My identity lingers intact.